What is going on, YouTube? This is The Last Musketeer, and welcome to my final thoughts on CounterSide. So, CounterSide in general is honestly not that bad. I think this game itself is somewhat engaging. It's not the most entertaining, maybe attention-grabbing game that there is out there, but it is one of those ones where it kind of reminds me of the old Cartoon Wars style, where it was an old game on the App Store that I used to play all the time, where you deploy units on your side, whether it be left side or right side, and then they'd walk over and battle the ones on the right side who were deploying the same kind of style units as well, and you're trying to destroy the other person's castle. Well, this is essentially what CounterSide is in a nutshell. There are bosses that kind of change the way you're looking at it a little bit, I guess, but in the majority of it, it's just going to be one side is trying to overtake the other, and it's a pretty simplistic style, which is honestly pretty easy to AFK with. You can do most of your stuff really easy. The only thing about it is I think there's a lot of units, and a lot of units that aren't necessarily that usable, because the meta in this game seems to be very, very specific. And while of course that is like most gachas out there, the meta in this one is essentially just kind of centered around Awaken units and some of the stronger SSR units. Now, they're not necessarily too hard to get when it comes to the regulars. The Awaken ones obviously are going to be really hard because they are the ones that you summon with specific tags. Now, the other ones can come into rotation and you can try to get them there. There are some that are available that are really, really good from the side missions, so you can farm them at any point and kind of build your roster off that. So there's some really, really good ones, namely Orca, who will be really good for you in both PvP and PvE later on, especially when she gets your rearm. And I'll talk about the rearm a little bit later, because I never actually got to fully rearm something. It's kind of probably my fault, because, like I said, I don't do this as a guide or walkthrough. I just kind of do it raw gameplay, so you get to experience what it would be like if you didn't follow guides and stuff like that. So there could have been better ways for me to actually try to farm up the rearm sources to be able to get them there, but it does take a bit of time to do that. But once you get your first one, it's going to be a massive improvement to what the character is capable of. So I do love that system, and I do think it's a great way of making something that maybe not meta viable be somewhat meta viable, even maybe take them to the point where they are in the meta, which is a great option and a great way to make it to where players can get something and get a little bit of a heads up, even if they're not welling out or spending a decent amount. And it's essentially basically like a balancing system without them having to go in and actually rebalance everything themselves. They add some new things to it. But the problem that comes with that is that you're going to have to farm the resources to be able to do it, and those resources are not going to be super readily available for free-to-play players. So that is one downside. Obviously, that is going to be something you're going to expect as a free-to-play, but there are ways around it, and just like anything, if you enjoy a game and you play it long enough, you're going to get a good amount of resources. You're going to get a good amount of meta characters. It just all comes down to the grind itself at the end of the day. But for me personally, while this game does have some nice, interesting aspects to it, it wasn't that entertaining to me personally. And judging based off some of the gameplay that you're seeing, you can make your own assessment on it, but it's a lot of just timing and making sure you've got the right skills ready, the right counters ready, which is something you're ordinarily going to deal with anyway. And before I go too far on this, let me talk for a second about Shinjia. She is one of the Awaken units, and these are the actual things that you use to summon the Awaken units. Now, as I'm going through, I didn't expect anything, but as you can see, it popped, and the golden thing turned a little red, which means I hit an Awakened unit. I don't know if that means it's the rate up character exactly, but I was very happy to see it. Do understand that you're probably not going to have the same luck as me, so also one thing as you're watching her movement here, know that they do know exactly what audience they're trying to hit, so you're going to see a decent amount of that. But it always makes me laugh as I'm going through some of the new characters, and especially the skins, and watching the animations. It always cracks me up. But hey, I don't blame them whatsoever. They know what they're doing. They're trying to make money off it at the end of the day. So, you know, more power to them. I have no problems with that whatsoever. But going into what her skills are capable of. So basically, she's an insane supporter that is all about buffing damage, whether it be a regular attack, crit damage, whatever it may be. And she also has healing when you get to level 5 of the skill level, and another one grants barrier as well. So basically, she's extremely good, and essentially when it comes to any awakened unit, this is what you're going to expect. They're going to be the cream of the crop of their respective class. And so she is a supporter. You can get ones like rangers, defenders, snipers, whatever it may be. They are going to be the pinnacle. Now there's going to be some that are probably more meta than others. Of course, that is a thing that is going to happen anytime. You can't have a full team of just awakened units unless you're welling out anyway. So kind of no point in that specifically. But when it comes down to the pulls for it, one thing that I do really like that they've done with this is that the awakened unit banners, the pity carries over. No matter if you spun on Shinjia, didn't get her, if you put 40 pulls into her and didn't get her, the next banner that is on there, or any other awakened unit, is going to have 40 of 150 on the pity. So if it does roll over to something else, and you do want something, you could specifically save up really high on the pity if your luck is bad enough, and then guarantee one of the units later on that could be really good. So, you know, it is a viable option to be able to just spin on any banner if you want to, just to try to get that unit if you want, and then build pity overall, because when it comes down to it, it's going to be hard to get the pulls, and you're going to have to just grind away and try to hope for the best. But there are a few things that I'm going to go over just one at a time, just kind of quickly run them through, just because I don't want to spend too much time talking about this. There's a lot that I've talked about in the other parts of the vid, and this is just going to be just a basic summary of what the experience was like. So this is my roster at the end of it. I have 3 awakened units. Maria Antonov, I got lucky and pulled in the first 10 pull on hers, as well as Shinjia, as you saw me talking about there, pulling her in the first 10. Now the previous one, the other one I had, Ministra, she was the one that I got from the coupon early on when I started the game. I don't know if that's still a thing they do, or if that was only a limited time, because I do believe it came with a code, and maybe the code lasts for a long time. I don't actually know on that aspect, but being able to pick Ministra was just such an improvement for my account. So right away I was able to clear some of the harder content really quick, because she is just that strong. Being able to pick something that you want from the Awakened category is a fantastic option, and I wish they did more of that. I wish they had more events where you could do that, even if it's a limited pool, because that's going to help free-to-play players a lot more. And I think, you know, that was something to do with the server merge, of course, being able to get a lot of these, because it's kind of like an apology, which in a way put the game in an awkward state and just made it feel like there was too much going on. So for me as a new player, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I got some help from Azad in the Discord. Big shout out to him. Thank you for all the help on this. I wish I was more into the game than I actually am, but it is what it is. I do appreciate your help as we were going through it, because he helped me a lot in understanding stuff that I wouldn't have realized going through on my own. But just to touch quickly on the Rearm, this is actually what it looks like in the Rearm system going through this. Elizabeth Pendragon was the SSR that I chose from the newbie start thing, where you get a guaranteed one, and her Rearm is actually pretty decent. I didn't quite get to it because I didn't have the supplies that I needed. One big thing is getting them all the way to level 110, which takes these cubes, these fusion cores that are a little hard to actually get. And while they're not the hardest thing ever, they do take some time to build up, especially along with those Rearm pieces that I needed 80 of, those little gold plate looking things. So yeah, it does take quite a bit of time to actually get to that point, but as you're playing through, you're going to have plenty of units to actually use. You don't necessarily need to worry about rushing a Rearm for a long time. I think there's plenty of viable units that you will have just from regular gameplay, and just from getting them from normal farming. Maybe you get lucky in some of the gacha parts of it. You're going to have a lot of options. Orca was one I was talking about earlier. Her Rearm is insane. Apparently makes her one of the best PvPers in the game, and she is not an awakened unit, so that is a really, really cool aspect. But one of the things about it is there are so many different events going on most of the time that I see that give you some really, really nice rewards. Most of them being the level up resources or coupons for like counter cores, range cores, whatever specific thing that you would need. And also, you know, sometimes you'll get fusion cores, which are really good, the ones that you need to take them from 100 to 110. Those are the ones I was talking about that are a little harder to come by, but they do give you a lot of options. These events are really nice, really easy to farm, extremely easy to farm, especially if you have a decent roster. You can get through them very, very quickly. Not to mention that this store itself has a lot of options for summoning specific characters if you want them, or going through and picking just the random SSR card for 2,000 instead. You can get specific pieces for characters if you have one that's almost out and you don't quite have a way of farming them. So there's plenty of options that they do give you for getting actual characters just from the gacha system itself, and just saving up from each pull that you do to get a guarantee. So I do think they do a great job in that aspect, and they also have ways of farming other pieces like fusion cores, set binaries that you will use to basically re-roll gear. And while we're on the topic and I'm showing you what all you can buy from this stuff, let me just take a second to talk about gear, because gear is the main driving force behind how strong your character is going to be. And that is a bit of a problem, because it is so hard to get the specific roll that you want on a piece of gear that I would imagine most of in-game is just trying to farm specific pieces. Now, there are ways of re-rolling it. The re-rolls are not that common. I mean, early on they probably are, and as you're getting a lot more resources and ways of spending for certain shops, you'll probably have a lot more. But I didn't get a whole lot of them early on, so getting a specific piece to the exact set I want and the exact rolls I want is nigh impossible, and it's going to take you a lot of time, which is where a lot of the time sink in the game goes to, because it's going to be the most important factor and the deciding factor for a lot of the PvP fights as well. So do be prepared to do a lot of grinding in that sense. The XP training, as I'm doing here, I'm simulating it. You don't have to have tickets for anything other than this, really. Some of them may have specific daily tickets as well, but when it comes to the campaign, you're just using energy. As long as you 3-starred the mission, you can sweep it. So another great aspect is not having to have specific tickets, because that does happen a lot in games like this, where they only give you a certain amount of skip tickets per day. So something I was also thankful for, and that I think they do a good job with. Now, the campaign itself, story-wise, it starts out a little slow and starts to build up, and I think they did a really, really nice job with the story. I'm not going to spoil any of it. I'm not going to talk about it in specifics. Let me just say that when it comes to the story building and the character building, they did a really good job, in my personal opinion. So I am thankful for that as well. The music itself was really good as well. It was kind of looping. A lot, it was like short songs that would loop, but there was one in specifics, and I don't remember the exact side story, the event mission it was, but I absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite songs that I've heard in any gacha in such a long time, and it reminded me so much of this old Star Wars song, and I don't remember the exact one on that one either, but it gave me some like nostalgia, and maybe that is why I liked it so much. But either way, I think the music part of it is nice. The looping, the small looping bit of it, it can get old at some point, but a lot of it is kind of good, and I think maybe the later events probably fleshed it out more than the early on stuff. But either way, you know, music's not going to be that big of a driving factor on what you play in a gacha system. And as a free-to-play player, the thing that people are going to be most concerned about, generally, is PvP. Now, I know there's some people that are kind of stay away from PvP. There's some that enjoy it a lot. But either way, I don't think it's that hard of a system for the regular. Now, there is a real-time strategy part of it, which is something I always frown upon in any game. There are plenty of games that do this RTS strategy where they really want you to just go one-on-one, real-time with people. But the thing about it is, you never know what's going to be on the other side of that competition. You could get somebody that is new like you, or a free-to-play player, and you might have a chance. But you could also run into a bunch of spenders, a bunch of wells, a bunch of people that have a lot more time in the game than you do, which inherently is obviously bad and going to lead to an easy defeat from you. Unless, you know, they just don't know what they're doing or they deploy things in a weird spot, which is where the strategy part of it comes in, and there's probably plenty of guides out there showing you the meta and showing how to counter specific things, so I'm not going to get into any of that because obviously I don't know. I don't do any of the RTS stuff. I always frown upon it, I stay out of it, but it is a good way of getting pieces, getting shop tokens to spend for stuff that gives some really good rewards, so I highly recommend doing it, but if you're like me and you don't like them, don't go for it. The regular PvP system has some really nice rewards that you can go through that reset every little bit. This is one of those ones where you spin through the entire first page, the second page on unlock. So for a free-to-play player or somebody that's not spending as much, you are more than likely not going to get through the whole page unless you've been hoarding for a little bit or you want specific things, which is fine, you know, spend it how you want to spend it. But I do think the options that they give for gear is actually really nice. You can get some easy tier 6, especially really early on. Not just from this, but you can get some good gear from the guide missions as well, which I do highly recommend. As I said in the last video on this series, absolutely do the guide missions as much as possible. That's going to give you an insane boost to your progress and help you to catch up to some of the later game stuff really fast, because the guide missions themselves actually gave me so much gear that I used to help me actually complete some of the PvP stuff that I struggled with for so long. They're really not that hard to do. I did beginners, expert, master, and I was almost through limited as well. And as you can see, it gave me some antagonist gear, T5, a full set of T5 that is very useful. It goes up to T7, I believe. It may be T8. But I think it's T7, which is something that is out of my range right now. I did buy some T6 stuff from the actual PvP shop, and like I said, really good items. I highly recommend that. But there are other things to do there, like world map. There's the employee plan, which is basically based on building certain units to a certain level threshold, which is really not that hard either. I think gold is somewhat easy to come by. The experience, as you can see here, I have a lot of it. 5,000 of the blue. I don't have a lot of the purple, but the purple gives a lot more than the blue, it seems. And then I have a decent amount of the regular. They're really not that hard to come by. I didn't go out of my way to farm this. This is just what I built up over time because I didn't necessarily need all my characters that high of a level. So I'm going through and just showing you what it's like to level them from 90 to 100, because the 90 to 100 is a big gap. And it's going to take a lot of experience, a lot of gold. But as you can see, I have a good amount of gold, I have a good amount of XP, and that's just as a free-to-play, just doing my regular, using my energy per day, that kind of thing, finishing my weeklies, whatever it may be. But I could ramble on and on and on about whatever I see and whatever I'm doing in the game, but as we're bringing this video to a close, if there's one thing I can say, is that at the end of the day, my opinion is my opinion on whether I like something or not. If you do like the gameplay and you do like the look of the game, go ahead and try it for yourself. See what you want to do. See if it's something that you might want to do on the side as like a side game or something. But for me, when it comes to the free-to-play, is it worth it aspect of it, I think it's a mixed bag. I think there's a lot of things they do right and a lot of things they do wrong, and I think because of the server merge, it put it in an awkward spot and somehow just kind of feels like it's going downhill. I don't know if that's actually what's happening or not, and feel free to disagree. That's the point of these. I want people to think about it and discover themselves. But anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.